Hello everyone, I'm here to film a video and I will succeed, okay? I filmed this like 2 or 3 times yesterday and just kept talking about things that I did not intend on discussing. We are going to stick to the agenda here and mention all the books that I read in 2021, but focus on favorites, okay? That's what this video is. Don't know what I'm titling it yet. It's probably going to go up a few days later than I intended. But here we are, and I'll go over my goals as well, and what my goals are going to be for 2022 in terms of books. I'm not going to make a 2022 goals video just because I'm kind of just going with the flow this year, I think. Read what I want to read, watch what I want to watch. And obviously that's what I do anyway, but I think sometimes when I make lists and I make goals, I end up sort of avoiding them. I don't know why. I know that this is something that other people talk about sometimes. It's a thing that happens because it's like you almost force yourself to do it. It's like it's an assignment or something like that. I guess I'll start there with what I had planned, what my goals were for 2021 for reading. Every year I usually at least have, for reading goals, have a number and maybe a list of books that I specifically want to get to. That usually, if I do it, it's hit or miss. And I know that going into every year. And 2021 was not a hit. I had I'm not even bothering with telling you what the books were, but I had like 5 books that were what I really wanted to get to. And then I sort of had an extended list and had 5 more books that was like, okay, well, if I had 10 books total, what would those books be? So I had like another 5 that were an extended or expanded list. I read like 1 from each sort of section there, and then I sort of altered one of the other books, which I'll get to when I talk about what I've read. So that didn't pan out. I've already mentioned before, like, I'm a huge mood reader, so even if there are certain books that I want to get to within the year, I think about when in the year I should read that book. So it's like, okay, it has to be the perfect time to read that book. And I'm so influenced by the seasons. So if something like feels like a summer book and then I don't get to it in the summer, it's like, well, it's not gonna, when am I gonna read it now? The summer has passed. I can't read it in the fall because that would be weird. That wouldn't feel right. And then I just move on to the other books that obviously feel like fall books or winter books or whatever season it now is. That's kind of another influence on my goals, I guess. So, did not complete the list of books that I was thinking about getting to. Though also I'm very aware that I make these lists and goals in January and don't know what the year holds for the world or myself as an individual. Then the number, I had 2 sort of number goals this past year, and that was to, like, a strict number goal of 36 books, read at least 36 books, and then loosely a loose goal of 52 books. So like, I've always wanted to get to 52 books. I thought that would be so cool. I don't know, just like a book a week. That's a good number, right? Especially considering I just don't think I would ever get to like 100 books the way so many booktubers somehow accomplish. Though I know that audiobooks has a huge play in that, and I just am too particular with my audiobooks, I feel like. If I think a book is going to be a new favorite, like, no, it's not happening on audiobook. I want it to just be me and the words that the author has written or that the translator has written on behalf of the author. Loose goal of 52 books would be really cool to get to that. I figured I probably wouldn't get to it, which I didn't. So then I set like a stricter goal of 36 books, which I almost completed. But like, I pretty much did it, okay? I read 35 books and started 2 that I didn't end up finishing. So that's what happened. Oh, I'm also gonna have sort of like, I have some pieces of paper here, by the way, which is why I keep looking over here. So I do have some like sort of statistics and just like information about it. This is gonna fall. Sorry. I read 35 books. If we're going to actually break it down a little bit, I had one rollover book from 2020 that I finished in 2021. So that was like one rollover book. Then I completely read 34 books and then started 2 books that I didn't finish in the year. So then also I read a good number of like short stories and short story collections and plays, which kind of makes me hope that if that trend continues, that I at least pick up sort of bigger books or more books in 2022. That's something that I'm going to be thinking about as I read throughout the year. Not that I'm like invalidating short stories or plays, but when I see the number of like short stories and just the plays that really don't take that much time to read, it's kind of like, but I want to get more reading done, so I want to like even that out. You know what I mean? I read 2 short story collections and 4 individual short stories. One of the short story collections had like a bunch of short stories, so I was gonna give you a total, but I didn't even bother counting with the one. I read 2 play collections and 2 individual plays for a total of 8. There are 8 books that I read that had to do with series, that were continuations of series or a series that I started and read. Those are within 2 overall series. And I say overall because each series actually happens to be made up of other series. So the 2 overall the 2 overall series are the Vampire Chronicles and the Grishaverse books by Anne Rice. Rest in peace, Anne Rice. And by Leigh Bardugo, respectively, with the titles there. So, I don't know why I'm like, here's the Vampire Chronicles and here's the Grishaverse, but the Vampire Chronicles, she integrated the Mayfair Witches trilogy into that series, as well as she sort of like started a different series called the New Tales of the New Vampires, I think that's what it is. I have it written down, but I'll look at it in a bit. And that was going to be like a sort of spin-off series where it was like biographies, I guess, of like vampire characters within the Vampire Chronicles, and then that just like didn't pan out the way that they were expecting or something like that. So they were just like, no, it's part of the Vampire Chronicles, and it's all Vampire Chronicles. And then the Grishaverse books are made up of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, the Six of Crows duology, and the King of Scars duology, and then a couple of like companion books in a way that have to do with like the lore and magic system and such of the world. That's like the breakdown of the series within the overall series, just saying. But I read 8 books among all of the things that I just mentioned. Oh, I read 3 nonfiction books. So now I will go through all the books that I read and hopefully be concise. I mean, this is probably, it's me. I'm never going to have a short video, by the way. You can take your time watching this. It's going to be a long one, but I also am trying not to talk for an incredibly long period of time, especially because I have 35 books to mention, and I probably will mention also the other 2 books that I started. So that's 37. So the first book that I read, this was my rollover book that I started in 2020 and finished in 2021, The Bird's Nest by Shirley Jackson. This I liked, but I definitely like Shirley Jackson's other novels that I've read. The narrative style of the other 2 books that I've read by her, which are We Have Always Lived in the Castle and The Haunting of Hill House, though they're not in We Have Always Lived in the Castle is in first person, but still, while We Have Always Lived in the Castle is in third person, it's still very much from the perspective of like the main character, so Maricat and Nell, respectively, within those books, and you still get a good glimpse into like their mindset. And this had different perspectives, still in third person, like The Haunting of Hill House, but each chapter, and they're larger chapters as well, they're longer chapters, you're getting different perspectives, it's following different characters, and I just feel like that kind of took away from the story, especially because I'm much more of a character-driven person when it comes to the stories that I am consuming. I get why it did this, because it has to do with Elizabeth, who kind of like finds out and is realizing to an extent that she has what used to be known as multiple personality disorder, which is now known as dissociative identity disorder. First, it very much follows... See, I'm already talking too much. This is what I didn't want to do. You follow, like, the doctor that she's seeing, the therapist, and you also follow her aunt for a bit, and then the other, like, alters, which is why I just feel like you don't get a real sense of the character of Elizabeth. So that's why I didn't enjoy it as much, but I did like it, and I did go into it knowing that it wasn't going to be really accurate in terms of DID and what we know now, because it was written in, like, the 50s, so still excited to continue with Shirley Jackson's work, though. So the second book that I read was Carol by Patricia Highsmith, which was originally published as The Price of Salt under the pseudonym Claire Morgan. And I liked this, but I almost want to say that I really liked it, but I really think I'm projecting my feelings of the movie onto the book. I would love to reread this and just pick up on different things, and also, like, now I know what to expect. You know, I can take in the story better, perhaps. It's not a favorite, but I do have, like, a lot of thoughts, which again pertains to the movie as well. Carol from 2015, starring Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara. It's so good. It has a lot of subtleties. I watched it 3 times, you guys. Within 2021, I watched it 3 times and liked it even more every time. There's so much to it, I feel like, and that's one of the reasons why I think it would be so interesting to reread this, probably after some more time has passed, though. It follows Therese, who she has a boyfriend, but she's not really happy with him, and she works at a department store, and one day a woman comes in buying a present for her daughter, because it takes place around Christmas time, and she leaves her gloves there, and then at the counter that Therese is helping her at. And then Therese sends the gloves back to her. And that sort of instigates this friendship that turns into a more romantic and sexual relationship. And I love them. It's very much from Therese's perspective, which is a little different than the movie, where I feel like there is a point where it shifts from focusing on Therese to focusing on Carol, which I think was a smart choice, though I do like being in, again, similar to The Bird's Nest and the other Shirley Jackson works that I was talking about, it's in third person, but still feeling like it's from the mindset and perspective of Therese. Yes. And it's my first Patricia Highsmith book, by the way. I feel like it was a good place to start because it gives me an idea of just, like, her sort of neutral writing, because she has written a lot of other, like, thrillers and, like, psychological thrillers. Of course, she's the author of the source material of my favorite movie, which I always go back and forth on, like, keeping the source material a secret if you don't know what Purple Noon or Plein Soleil is an adaptation of, but it's The Talented Mr. Ripley. Purple Noon, Plein Soleil, same movie, French title and English title. That's my favorite movie. It's The Talented Mr. Ripley, which is a series of books, actually, that Patricia Highsmith wrote. She's also the author of, like, Strangers on a Train, and another one that I just am blanking on right now. Yeah, it gave me a glimpse into her writing. Also, she was a lesbian, so, like, this deals with a lesbian relationship, and it has a happy ending. And I feel like it's kind of known now, that may be a little spoilery, but, like, it doesn't have a tragic ending, and that's important when you're reading gay stories, I feel like. Not only I feel like it is, okay? Yes. So, third, fourth, and fifth books, we are grouping these together here. It's the Shadow and Bone trilogy, which I honestly can't even get into. I said I was going to try to be concise, and I am doing a better job than I was before. But I also would like to talk about these and I want to talk about these, but I really want to talk about the adaptation, the TV show on Netflix, the series. The first season came out in April of last year. Shadow and Bone, that's what the series is called. Here's the cover of Shadow and Bone. I watched that, and then I watched it again with my mom that time, and I just have a lot of thoughts and feelings, and would like to watch it a third time, but I don't know if I should do that, like, soon-ish, or if I should wait until the second season is about to go up. I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm very excited for it, and I realize I'm saying all of this, like, without context of what Shadow and Bone is, but, like, Nikolai's my favorite character, and he shows up in the second book, and the series, the first season, mostly deals with Shadow and Bone, the first book. So, like, Nikolai. I don't think we have casting news yet. This working? Yes, there we go. Hello, everyone. Look at this superb quality. Did you see those glitch marks? Is that gonna show up? Anyway, also my computer just started getting a little loud. What terrible quality. What if I put up a piece of a window? Here we are. I just wanted to pop in because the announcement for season 2 cast members, like new cast members, and obviously returning cast members, pictures have been posted, a video has been posted. It's very exciting. However, I'm not sure how I feel about them, like, giving us who the characters are, in a way. Obviously with Whelan, if you know, you know. I mean, I understand there's a difference. I see his last name there. Obviously that hints at something having to do with Whelan, if you haven't read the books, but I was kind of hoping that they would, like, announce a Sturmhond person, because I want that. I want Sturmhond to be another person. It needs to be an actor that has not been announced yet. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. Yes, okay. Anyway, Shadow and Bone, it's a fantasy series, it's YA, this is the complete trilogy, and then there are other books that take place in this world, the Grishaverse, but you don't technically have to read any of the other ones to understand this. This is the first series, anyway, that came out of the Grishaverse. It used to be called the Grisha Trilogy, now it's called the Shadow and Bone Trilogy. It's by Leigh Bardugo, by the way. I don't know if I said the author's name. It deals with Alina, who, without going into, like, all the magic system and stuff like that, basically there are Grisha, and they are people with powers, and then there's just normal people who don't have any abilities. And Alina, she grows up as an orphan with her best friend Mal, and she finds out, basically, by going through this thing called the Fold. It's basically just like this black abyss that cuts the country, that just cuts through the country, Ravka. And yeah, it's just completely black, and there's these, like, creatures that I'm forgetting what they're called, but they live there, and they kind of prevent people from crossing over, so they have to, I can't. They prevent people often from coming from West Ravka to East Ravka and the other way around. The country has been split into these different parts because of the Fold, and Alina has to cross the Fold, and when she is in there, she discovers that she is a sun summoner, which then she becomes, like, the most important person, because then everyone thinks that that means that they can get rid of the Fold and have a whole country again, and things like that. Oh my god, there's so much. I did not do the series justice with that explanation. It's kind of, the chosen one trope, but I think it was really well done. I like the series a lot. I don't know which book would have been my favorite. Nikolai's my favorite character, and I had a good time with it, and I like the lore and the world that it takes place in. I haven't read that much fantasy, but yeah, I don't know, enjoyable, okay? And also, I mean, I was talking about how I want to rewatch the show. I want to do a video talking about the show and differences and things that I really like about the show and things that I wish were kind of done differently. I just don't know when I should do that. And then I read Where Angels Fear to Tread by E.M. Forster. This is a classic. I actually already talked about this in another video, so hopefully I remember. I don't have to talk about those books that I talked about in other videos more thoroughly. So I will link that video in the description and in the card. I know this one and a couple others here I mentioned in a video. I'm not sure about other ones, but I was reading books. There were books that I was reading, and then I watched adaptations of them, and this is a book that I had read and then subsequently watched an adaptation of. I like this. I think that, I'll just give you my thoughts. I like it. It gave me a good indication on what I can expect with E.M. Forster, and I'm excited more so to get to his fuller novels and more well-known novels, because this is, like, pretty short. It's not even 200 pages. The, like, last third or so is the most memorable part of this. wild. Also, I should mention that I feel like this edition, I don't know what the synopsis is like on other editions, but it gives information that I am glad I didn't read beforehand. So just like be wary of reading synopses for Where Angels Fear to Tread if you would rather not know too much information. And then I read The Tale of the Body Thief by Anne Rice. This is one of the books of the Vampire Chronicles. This is book 4. Oh my god, yeah, it is. It's book 4. Amazing. Okay. I actually listened to this on audiobook. It's narrated by Simon Vance, who does a good number of the Vampire Chronicles audiobooks. He is like the voices of Louis and Lestat, so he did the first 3 and this one and then the next one, and obviously any other ones I'm assuming that come later on in the series that are from the perspective of Lestat, because Louis only narrates the first book, which is Interview with the Vampire. By the way, if you didn't know what the Vampire Chronicles is, you may be familiar with Interview with the Vampire. That's the first book in the series. And so The Tale of the Body Thief, the 4th book in the series, I liked it. I mean, it's a good time. It's fun. At this point, I'm just really enjoying following Lestat and the other characters that I've gotten to know over the past few books. And there are some like big changes that happen because of this in terms of character, as well as the next one, but that one's like a little different. I'll get to that momentarily. This has to do, I mean, you can really read this sort of as a standalone in a way. There are things that happen and that are mentioned that you'll have more context for, obviously, if you read the first 3 books. But it's kind of like this mystery. I don't want to say like a murder mystery. Well, there is murder involved. But this sort of sketchy but very intriguing man approaches Lestat, the vampire, and he says that he can switch bodies with him, with Lestat. And Lestat has sort of been interested in being a human again, just to experience that. And so, of course, he gives in. He's like, yes. And meanwhile, there's this other character, David, who's like, that is a terrible idea, Lestat. You are one of the most powerful vampires, and you're just going to give somebody else your body? But he does it, and of course, that person becomes the body thief and steals Lestat's body. And Lestat just has this terrible time being a human. Like, the best part about it is that he gets to feel the sun again and gets to go out in the daytime. But meanwhile, he has to deal with, like, other bodily functions that he hasn't had to deal with for, like, hundreds of years. And honestly, I kind of appreciated and liked that those things were involved, especially because that sort of physiological, those, like, physiological traits are so much a part of the vampires and of humans in the series, if you get what I mean. Like, those differences. Fun, kind of frustrating, because you're like, Lestat, you're being so dumb, but he's impulsive as well. So, I enjoyed it. It wasn't a favorite, though. I still have not talked about a favorite, by the way, and I'm doing a much better job than I was yesterday. There may, depending on time, I may actually have to split this into like a couple videos or something like that. But the next book that I have is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is the next sort of series that comes along in the Grishaverse books. It is the first book in the Six of Crows duology. And this was my first favorite book of the year. It's so good. Oh my god. And I'm so glad that I wasn't disappointed. I was disappointed in like certain ways, but so many people on BookTube like love this book and give it 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm like, and that made me like kind of nervous to finally get to it and stuff, because I did like the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but I don't know if it was going to be sort of similar to that. I just didn't know exactly what to expect. I'm not sure how many years apart the series were published, but anyway, this takes place after the events of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, which, did I even mention that the Netflix series of Shadow and Bone is Grishaverse books overall? Like, it focuses for the Shadow and Bone trilogy on Shadow and Bone, the first book, but it also brings in characters from Six of Crows, which is very strange because this takes place so far after those other events, and the characters don't have any relation or interaction with each other, but they do in the series, which is another reason why I like really wanted to talk about it. So it takes place in the same world. There are Grisha and humans and other things that I can't necessarily mention because of things that happen in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. My favorite part of this, I can at least talk about this a little bit more. I don't know, I still feel like it's kind of hard to talk about because it is part of an overall series, but the reason I feel like why this is a favorite book of mine is because of how much I love Nina and Matthias. I hadn't really known anything about them when I went into it. I've really only heard people like talk about and just be in love with Kaz and Inej, which I understand, but I definitely think that they are more of the focus in the next book, and there's a lot of sort of backstory with Nina and Matthias in this book, and I was so into it. I think that it was really well introduced. Also, like, you meet Kaz, so this is like, it has to do with Kaz, who is this, how do I even begin to describe Kaz? He's like a, what is a word? I mean, he's a criminal. There's that. He's a thief. He's a thief. He's a criminal. He runs like a gambling, or works for somebody who owns like a gambling house. He's like a expert magician. Like that's what I want to call him. He doesn't have any like powers, but all the characters in this, except for Nina, is a Grisha. She's a heartrender, which means that she can basically like control people's hearts, which is such a cool power. Oh my gosh. But except for Nina, the characters in this are like just humans with some cool abilities. It's not like they have superpowers in the way that Grisha kind of do. So he's like an expert magician. That's the best way that I can describe him, because like that's how he can get away with like being sort of this notorious thief and criminal. He's approached by someone in the beginning. God, there are so many details that I'm forgetting. I'm really gonna have to review these books at some point with all the information. Someone basically wants him to get a person. Actually, it's not even just a particular object, it's a person, and that is the heist that he has to go on. So he gets his crew of people, and that includes Nina and Inej and Jesper and Matthias, who isn't mentioned until like 60 pages into this or something like that, and like that's a pretty good chunk. I could be a little off by that. I swear I wrote it down at some point. Oh, maybe it's a little bit more than that. So Matthias is not mentioned for like a good number of pages into the book, and it's like the whole time I knew that obviously it's called Six of Crows, so I knew that there were like 6 main characters and 6 characters who are a part of this sort of like crew gang, at least for the heist. There's 6 members, and I was like, where is this other character that I know was here, but I didn't really remember his name, because of how much I had only heard about, like, Kaz and Inej. They were really the only characters that I could, like, remember the names of from what other fans have said about the series and from other booktube videos and stuff and such. I was like, I know there's another character, like, where is this character? Who are they? And then finally he's mentioned, and, oh, it's just, like, the way that he's introduced, plus like clearly there's something going on between like Nina and Matthias and their history, like, and it's so hard to explain. It's just kind of like, I don't know, I had like whiplash, like, because I was thinking one thing about their relationship, and then it turned out to be another thing, and then it turned out to be another thing, and I loved reading their backstory. Like, their chapters were my favorite chapters. And the heist was cool. Part of the heist actually is getting Matthias, because he's in jail. And, like, the most unbreakable jail. Unbreakable? Like, you cannot break into this jail. But Kaz can do it. That's, like, part of the heist. So they have to get Matthias. But then there's a whole other heist. There's a whole other second part to the heist, basically. Am I doing a good job? It was really good, okay? Also, it's been like almost a year since I've read it, so details have definitely are lost from my mind. I don't know what else to say, but it was like my first favorite book of the year. So glad it did not disappoint, and yeah, okay, I don't know what else to say, but it's very good. Okay, Then we have a collection of plays, which is Suddenly Last Summer and Other Plays by Tennessee Williams. There are 2 additional plays in this besides Suddenly Last Summer, and they are The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore and Small Craft Warning. I literally always forget the name of this. It was my least favorite play. Probably that I read least favorite play maybe that I've ever read. I don't know. I don't remember the piano lesson very much. I don't remember that one very much. I had to read that in school. This, my Small Craft Warning, yes, maybe my least favorite play ever. However, The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore makes up for that, because that ended up being my favorite play that I read in 2021. Suddenly Last Summer I also very much liked. Probably like, I don't know about ever, but top 3 Tennessee Williams plays: The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore, A Streetcar Named Desire, and then Suddenly Last Summer, of what I've read so far. But I have read a good number of his plays. I read 6 last year, 2021. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to say this year a lot when I really mean 2021. How to talk about these, because that's like technically, I mean, this counts as one book, but technically that's 3 plays that I would have to describe. So, Suddenly Last Summer, I still think that my, I don't know what video it was in, but I described 3 things to expect. Beginner's Guide to Tennessee Williams. Is that what I called it? I don't remember. I'm going to have to like edit that clip and save it just as its own sort of video, as its own clip, and insert it in other videos. Because it's really so accurate. I may have to alter one thing. I said it was like a beginner's guide to Tennessee Williams, and it's 3 things that you can basically expect in almost every Tennessee Williams play, and that's 1, gay; 2, an older person struggling with aging, like struggling with aging. Yeah, is that how I worded it? I don't remember. But they're having a hard time accepting that they're aging. And I'm pretty sure I specified like a woman, an older woman, but really, actually, it could be any gender, because a different play later on, the man is like, I'm getting older, I'm not young anymore, and it's like a realization point for him within the play. And then the third thing is like something, probably something really fucked up. 3 things to expect in Tennessee Williams plays. And that stands true after reading 6 of his plays this year. Again, Small Craft Warning was just so underwhelming. It was so boring. That one, I guess I'll just start with that. Small Craft Warning is about just like people at a bar. They were just like at a bar, sort of dealing with their own lives. And I just didn't really care. And I didn't like any of the characters. Like, none of them were interesting or intriguing to me. Honestly, that's the gist of the play. What does it say on the bit? A motley group of people, including a blousy beautician, a discredited alcoholic doctor, a vulnerable waif, and 2 gay men, sit around a seedy bar on the Californian coast, each contemplating their own desperate fate. Like, that's it. So that's kind of what I said, right? And then Suddenly Last Summer, I'll talk about the sort of title play here, is about Violet Venable, who has contacted a doctor. I don't remember his name, but his nickname is Dr. Sugar, and Dr. Sugar is a very successful lobotomist, and Violet wants to get to have a lobotomy performed on this young woman, played by Elizabeth Taylor in the film adaptation. So that's what the cover is here. Okay, oh my god, see, this is what I mean. I could really go into this, but I'll, again, try to be concise here. One of my favorite things about plays is just how you're dropped into the moment, but there's so much else that you're missing. You don't know anything about these people. You don't know where they are in their lives. You don't know the events that just happened beforehand. You don't know the events that come way earlier that may be influencing the period of time that you are focused on within the play. You know what I mean? But you can gain so much information. Anything of importance, especially things that have happened in the past, events that are significant and factors into things that end up happening within the play, it has to be told through the dialogue. but it has to still be like natural and organic for the characters to even be saying that information in the first place. Oh, I really think that playwrights are like underappreciated, because that's just got to be so difficult. Yet you have to also keep the other plot lines going and the character development going and everything and everything going while still like giving all this other background information that could be important. And I think Tennessee Williams does a very good job of that. And also, another sort of part as to why I like that so much, just the nature of plays, is that so often that information that ends up being revealed can sort of be a twist. But no matter what, I feel like it often causes me to sort of like take a step back and like contemplate things in a different way, because suddenly I'm seeing things from a different perspective because of that information, because of that new context that I have. And that's something that happens, I feel like the way that I read Suddenly last summer, I feel like that happens kind of early on when it's stated that the young woman that Violet wants the lobotomy to be performed on is her niece. Like, I feel like that is not information that is clear until a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, it's not just like, I mean, first of all, needing somebody to, wanting a procedure to be done, a lobotomy to be performed on another person is already like a terrible thing, in my opinion. But also for it to be like your niece or a relative, and clearly she's being very vindictive about it and unethical, especially because she like tries to bribe Dr. Sugar. So the play has to do with why Violet wants this lobotomy to be performed, and involves Catherine, the niece, sort of coming fully clean and relating events that are the reasons as to why Violet wants her to have this lobotomy, and finds it imperative for her and her reputation and her son's reputation, who is Sebastian, who died while on vacation with Catherine, and that has to do with the whole event of what happened and such and that stuff. Yes. And then the milk train doesn't stop here anymore. I'm spending far too much time on this already, but the milk train doesn't stop here anymore. It felt really familiar. Oh shoot, but this is one of my favorite things. So technically I can spend a little bit more time on it, but I feel like it's a little hard to get into. It felt really familiar to me, and I still can't figure out why. I have not seen the film adaptation as far as I'm aware. It's called Boom. I don't know the year off the top of my head. I tried to watch the trailer because, well, I did watch the trailer, because I thought like, oh, was it familiar because I had seen the film adaptation before? But it didn't seem right. I was like, no, I don't think I've seen this. It also confused me because Elizabeth Taylor also stars in it, and she plays one of the main characters, Mrs. Goforth, and Mrs. Goforth is the character in the play that is struggling with aging. She is going to die soon, and she's not ready. She is dictating her memoirs and having her assistant write them, transcribe them for her, and yes, so that's what she's dealing with. Being in denial that she will die, that she is like pretty much on her deathbed. Yeah, so she's older in this, and then the plot has to do with this young man who is supposed to be around 20, I'm pretty sure. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's correct. But in the movie, he's played by like Richard Burton, who's like around the same age as Elizabeth Taylor, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, like, they were married and stuff, but there's like not a big age difference, at least visually, as far as I can tell. So it was very confusing as to why Richard Burton was playing this character in the movie. I don't know. Again, I only saw the trailer. It didn't seem familiar to me, so I don't think I've seen the film adaptation before. Regardless, I would like to give it a watch and see how it goes, especially since it's, you know, my favorite play in this collection and one of my favorite plays that I read this year. Chris, that's the name of the young man. I don't remember if I already said so, but he has a sort of reputation where he has visited and been companions to other older women who then happen to die when he, like, after some time that he's been hanging out with them or having some sort of relationship with them. and they die. And Mrs. Goforth is like, get out of here right now. You are an omen. I feel like he kind of is an omen, but at the same time, he may be more like this, I don't want to, like, angel figure in a way, who just happens to be there at the right time to, like, comfort the older women when they are dying. But she's very suspicious of him and wary of what he's doing and why he's there. He, like, wants to tell her something. I don't even remember what that information is, but he, like, wants to tell her something, and he ends up staying for a while. That's, like, the gist of it. I think that's enough information for this. How much longer should I go with this? I'm definitely going to have to split this up, probably. I'm just going to keep going for as long as I can. So then next, we have Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. Also, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, I have the great hardback editions with sprayed edges. Cool, right? I think they're so cool. Wow, why am I... I was having such a difficult time with that. But Crooked Kingdom, I definitely liked Six of Crows more. Like I said before, I just was really taken with Nina and Matthias, and they were, I feel like, very much the focus of Six of Crows, and I feel like the focus characters in Crooked Kingdom are Kaz and Inej, so this is just a continuation of the heist. I mean, they've finished the heist, and they have returned, or they are taking the person to the person who first approached Kaz, but a lot of other shit goes down, and they find out more information along the way while they are doing the heist. And so this sort of picks up, that heist is over, but there's still, why am I forgetting, like, things that happen in this? Oh my god, wow, this one's really gone from my mind. I think that there is a lot of sort of other backstory as well, though, with Kaz. You really get to know Kaz a lot more, which I appreciate, because I liked him in Six of Crows, but I didn't love him. I mean, I understood reasons why he was being very cold and distant to the other characters, but I also feel like that kind of makes him distant to you as the reader. And I do want to say that I like the way that the chapters are. One of the reasons why I think that the Six of Crows duology is so much more, like, loved compared to the Shadow and Bone trilogy is because the trilogy is solely from Alina's perspective. Again, not first person, but Alina is the main character, and it's all from her point of view, from her perspective. So you don't know what the other characters are doing. You don't know what they're thinking as much unless they're saying it, or unless it's being shown through, like, an expression on their face or something like that. And with these books, they switch perspectives for the chapters. So here it says, like, chapter 5, and it's a Jesper chapter. So you're following all the main characters, which I really like about this. Oh, I cried. Oh no, I just remembered things that were happening. I can't talk about it because there's so much spoilery information. I like, again, just getting to know the characters more, especially, oh my god, I forgot his name. There's a character, Whelan, there we go. He is an important character in the books. I don't think he gets perspectives, because I do remember noting that, at least with Six of Crows, that he's a character and he's a major character, but he doesn't get perspective. He doesn't get chapters, like, solely focusing on him and what he is doing. Maybe that's just because he's, like, with Jesper for most of the time. So it's like, if you're getting a Jesper chapter, you're also kind of getting a Whelan chapter. But you find out a lot more about him, which I really liked, because he, in a way, felt kind of like a tool in Six of Crows, because he's a newer character for the other characters. Like, they don't already have a relationship with him. He's just like, he's new to the gang, basically, in Six of Crows. He becomes more embedded in the Crow gang. They're not called the Crows. What are they called? I just call them the Crows. Lots of people call them the Crows, but I forgot the dregs? It's fine. It doesn't matter. I don't know what else to say about this, especially because I don't want to get into spoilery information. Lots of, like, twists, though, which I liked. I mean, nothing that I was shocked by necessarily, but also nothing that I thought was dumb. Me just grasping at straws for other things to say about it. And then I think we have... Oh... Next, we have Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn, which I don't have physically at the moment. My mom said a friend wanted to borrow it, and she knew that I had it because it was actually hers, and then she read it, and she gets rid of her books so often. She's just constantly, like, rotating things on her shelves. So she didn't want it anymore, and I wanted to read it, so I read it, and I was just gonna keep it because that's the type of person I am. Is a keeper of books, even though I did not like it. Thank God I did not write annotations in it. I just read it, like, within basically one night, and then the next morning I had like 40 pages left or something like that I finished that morning, because the person that the person who was borrowing it, thank God I did not have annotations in it, or else it just would have been like, what is this, what's happening? No. No, it was just so mediocre. That's, like, the best word that I can use to describe it. And you can know more of my thoughts in the same video that I talked about, Where Angels Fear to Tread, because I watched the book, and then I read the book, and then I watched the film adaptation that is on Netflix that went through, like, editing hell. Mediocre. If you wanted, like, fast thriller, go for it. But, like, probably not worth your time, in my opinion. Then we have Memnoch the Devil, which is the 5th book in the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. Again, I listened to the audiobook narrated by Simon Vance. It's from the perspective of Lestat. And Lestat this time, he's getting up to shenanigans. In this, though, by the end, he's having sort of an existential crisis, but also more in, like, a worldly sense and religious sense. I am not sure where Anne Rice was in her religious journey, because if you don't know, I think she was, could be wrong on this, I at least know that she was, like, once an atheist, and then she became a Christian, and then she became an atheist again. So, but I think that she, like, grew up a Christian and was very religious, and then she was an atheist, and then she was a Christian again, and then she was an atheist again. I think that's right. I could be wrong. I know that she had ups and downs, though, and that she died an atheist. So, not sure where she was when she wrote this. Oh, no, wait. I remembered this yesterday and I forgot again today. No, there are, like, 2 books within the overall Vampire Chronicles that she kind of doesn't, she didn't, because she unfortunately died, but, she didn't consider canon anymore because they were when she was, like, really religious again and sort of, messed with things in a way that ended up, she didn't end up liking later on once she sort of denounced God another time. Those books come much later in the series, so it has to have been then when she was a Christian again and then was an atheist again. So I think she was I'm going to assume she was an atheist based on that information that I am remembering yet again, that she was an atheist when she wrote this. And I say all that because it's called Memnoch the Devil, and it's mostly Memnoch's life. He is the devil. He is Lucifer. He has many names, but he was once an angel that fell from heaven and, like, rejected God. And it's his story. It's very, I'm not a religious person. I actually don't really know that much about, like, religious stories and different things like that. Like, I know Adam and Eve are a thing, and I know that Lucifer is a thing, but I don't know as much, like, symbolism and more specific details of stories. I know, like, a few other things, basically from art history. So this is about Memnoch. It's like, oh my god. Okay, it's just another book where a shady but intriguing character approaches Lestat, and he's cautious, but no, he's impulsive, and he must know. He has to follow them. He has to do the thing that they are enticing him with. And in this book, it is Memnoch the Devil saying, hey, I want you to come to hell and just help me, help rule hell with me, basically. I don't know who instigates it, actually. I don't remember if it's Lestat who wants to know more about Memnoch, or if he's just like, no, I'm gonna tell you my whole story to persuade you into doing this, coming to hell with me. And that's what he does. He tells his life story about how he, like, became human, right? Is that it? He becomes human, and he learns the human way. No, first God has to make humans. It's a whole thing, obviously. I wasn't gonna speak this much about this one, but there's like a lot to this, and I liked it, and Lestat, again, up to shenanigans, ends up having a crisis at the end of this, like, he buries himself at the end. Is this another one where he just buries himself at the end? He's constant. He's just got so many emotions. He's dealing with a lot. He's an old, powerful vampire, and the most famous of them all, the Brat Prince. It's mostly Memnoch's story, and I just wish, I don't mind the religious stuff. I don't mind, like, having him as a character and stuff like that. It just feels kind of weird. I just much rather would have followed the supernatural vampire characters and such. I say and such a lot. Also, Lestat is not going to be a narrator for a number of books now, and I know that that's a reason why this is one of, like, the least favorite books for fans of the Vampire Chronicles. Continuing, okay, we've got an audiobook that I don't have. I don't have the book physically. It is My Oxford Year by Julia Whelan. Whelan? Whelan? She is the author, but she's also the narrator of the audiobook. She actually is, that's mostly her job, what she's known for, I guess. She has narrated so many, I was looking at her, like, profile page on Audible. She's narrated so many audiobooks. It's crazy, and I do think that she's also one of the more well-known narrators, at least from the circle of people that I, like, follow and such. There I go, saying and such again. Even just recently, it was Noelle Gallagher mentioned that Julia Whelan, I think, is one of her favorites, if not her favorite narrator. This was her debut novel, I'm pretty sure, My Oxford Year, and it's about characters that I don't remember the names of. A woman who is in her last year of graduate school? She's in college. She's at university, and she gets a scholarship. She's American, and she gets a scholarship to go to Oxford, and I'm pretty sure, oh my god, yeah, I don't remember this one very well. I listened to it all in one night. I liked it. It was fine. It was like a solid 3 out of 5 stars for me. It's a little bit more, like, on the contemporary side. A little bit of romance in there, because it turns out it's like a enemies to lovers kind of thing, where she has this encounter with this, like, really rude guy at a bar, restaurant place, pub, whatever, and then it turns out that that's, like, the professor of one of, like, the classes that she's taking, and it's, like, the important class that has to do with her major for the most part, and her, like, dissertation or something like that. It's very significant anyway, and she has this encounter, and then it turns out to be her professor. So she hates him, but then ends up finding out more about him and things like that, and spending more. I think just, well, I'll leave it at that. I don't know. It was fine. I'm not a big, like, contemporary person, that genre, so I enjoyed my time listening to it, but I don't think it's something that I don't want to get the book physically, so I wasn't that in love with it. Again, solid 3 out of 5 stars. That was a bad description of it. I'm sorry. The next book is another audiobook. It is Next Year in Havana by Chanel Cleeton, narrated by Kyla Garcia and Frankie Corzo. So this has to do, oh gosh, I don't know the years. This I probably should have looked up. The main character's grandma dies, and the grandma was born in Cuba, and she is the younger generation, like, of her family. It was, like, her parents and then her and her sisters who emigrated from Cuba to the United States. And now Marisol, I think, is the main character's name. Now, yeah, I think that's right. No, Marisol. Is that the grandma? Someone's name's Marisol, but I don't remember which one. All right, well, the main character is tasked with bringing her ashes to Cuba, back to Havana, and she also wants to find out more about her family and about her grandmother, because she loves the stories about Havana. I keep going back and forth on saying Havana and Havana. I'm sorry. But she loves the stories that her grandma told her when she was a kid. And so she finally is in Cuba for the first time, in Havana. It's not under the regime anymore. I don't know Cuban history. And I did look up things that I have now forgotten. But there's like still something about like international travel. There's like a lot of strict rules on. It doesn't take place like now. It takes place a little bit more in the past. And then, so you're following the main character, and you're also following, it goes back and forth between her and events of her grandma's life. So that's why there are two narrators, and they kind of converge at certain times when the main character is finding out more about her grandmother and meeting people and encountering people in Havana at that time when she's there. And also, there's like this guy that she falls in love with. That's just also a part of it. It's historical fiction, but it's also got this like contemporary romance. You know, those genres kind of within it as well. I liked it, but I feel like I would just. I don't know. The thing is, I really like historical fiction. I just feel like I wish I knew more about Cuban history before I went into it, and now I kind of would just rather read like a nonfiction book about Cuba and Havana and the totalitarian regime that was in place at the time that like her grandma lived there. Yeah, there's also a sequel, but it's actually like a sequel prequel situation where it follows one of the sisters of the grandma. I don't think I'm going to read that. I don't know if this is an author for me either, especially because it didn't feel. Honestly, I'm just like really comparing it to Kate Morton, who is my favorite historical fiction writer and one of my favorite authors. And it just, I like the settings of Kate Morton novels more. I like her characters more. This felt a little oh my god, maybe it's YA and I just am not even thinking about that. Is it YA? I was gonna say it felt a little juvenile, even though the main character is a woman. It felt kind of juvenile. Maybe it's actually more for YA audiences. I feel like it would be better for younger people who are getting more into historical fiction to sort of start out with, I guess. Then next, yes. We're starting, by the way, this pile over here I'm talking about in this video / these videos, however I'm gonna put this up. Also, I already mentioned that it's going to be up later than I intended, but also I have to like edit them, and also probably I'll put in images for the audiobooks and extra information. I'm always clarifying things. I feel like that's just something I do. I feel like that's one of the reasons why I don't prepare as much, because if I do need to clear something up, I will just put the text on the screen or in the description or both. Anyway, the next book that I read was The Danish Girl by David Ebershoff, which I talk about in the same video that I talked about Where Angels Fear to Tread and The Woman in the Window. So I'm not really going to talk about this. Similar situation to what I was just talking about with Next Year in Havana, being like, oh, I would like to pick up a nonfiction book about Cuba and Havana. I rather would have just picked up something that was actually nonfiction about Lily, but this is also historical fiction. I have a lot of questions I just question this, honestly. Does that give you enough information? I think it was the lowest rated book that I read. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Next, I have, yes, Madame de by Louise de Vilmorin. I liked this, but I feel like I've forgotten a lot of it because I since watched the film adaptation, which is The Earrings of Madame de, and you're kind of following the earrings. And they're going from one character. I like the interweaving of the characters in this, though. The movie is quite different, though. Oh, yeah. I keep mentioning, anytime I mention this, I think I did. Oh, wait. Did I talk about this in that adaptations video that I just mentioned? I think I did. Well, I'll just mention this other thing before I move on, since I'm pretty sure I did. So I keep mentioning, though, this hilarious interview with the author, Louise de Vilmorin. And, oh, by the way, I will mention that this is translated by Duff Cooper, because it, of course, was originally written in French. It was just so funny to see this interview with the author, and she was complaining how the film was not her novella, but she was just so full of life and so, like, sassy. I loved it. I would love to watch more interviews and just, like, videos that she is in, and I'm not sure what else she's written, so I may also look into that as well. So I'm pretty sure I talked about that in the sort of adaptations video that I will be linking. Now I have the 3 nonfiction books that I ended up reading, which all have to do with Marilyn Monroe. Here they are. They're kind of odd sizes. The first one that I read was Life, Remembering Marilyn. And I think this might have been a reread, but honestly, I'm not 100% sure. It's just because there's so much information about Marilyn Monroe that I already knew when I was visiting these books, when I was reading them. So I don't know how much was just information that I had known because of other articles that I read and things that I read online, or other books that I have read, or maybe I read some pages and skimmed others and such. Because whenever I get like books like these that are kind of larger, and especially like biographies that include or like biographical books or historical books that include lots of information and pictures, I like looking at the pictures, and then sometimes I read the caption, maybe the page next to it, you know, things like that. So I couldn't tell if this was a reread or not. The next 2 I know I have not read before. This was a question mark, because I have had it on my shelves for quite a while. I marked Fragments, which will be the 3rd book that I mentioned. I marked that one as my favorite, for reasons I'll get to then, but really all of these are kind of grouped together, and this is actually what I ended up sort of altering one of my goals. This is the goal that I altered. On the like extended list of books that I wanted to get to in 2021, I had Blonde. The title's only on the spine here. Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates. This is a fictionalized version of Marilyn Monroe's life. It is extremely long, right? It's like 1,000 pages, and it's Marilyn Monroe's life. But of course, there's a lot of it that Joyce Carol Oates has to sort of make up and have her own. Obviously, as an author, people have their own interpretations that is integrated into the way that their story is written, and especially if they're trying to get certain messages across. It's a fictionalized account of Marilyn Monroe's life, and the adaptation for this is coming out this year, I'm pretty sure, on Netflix. And so it was like a goal to read this last year, and then I was like, no, before I read this, I would like to revisit and read the biographical, like more factual books about Marilyn Monroe first before I jump into this, and just to refresh my memory on the information that I had already learned previously, and maybe find out new things about Marilyn Monroe. And it has been very helpful. But then I realized recently that I should have made like some sort of timeline with like significant events, but I'm hoping that is already available online, considering Marilyn Monroe is one of the most like well-known, talked about figures in history ever. So yeah, there's that. I'm just making a mess. I don't have places to put things anymore. So I read Life. I very much liked it. I do annotate my books as well, even this one that has sort of like glossier pages, if you can tell, but I underlined and bracketed certain things that I probably will go back to just to remember that information. I remember reading something terrible about Arthur Miller in one of these. Yeah, did not like that. Also, I really love this photo on the front. Okay. I love Marilyn Monroe. Also, I've been meaning to make a video about her because she's so significant for me. So that will probably come this year. I kept meaning to make it, and then I I don't know, I focused on other things basically. So then the next book that I read is My Story, by Marilyn Monroe with Ben Hecht, with a foreword by Joshua Green. So this is like part of a book that Marilyn Monroe was writing when she died. And so the pages were found, the draft was found, and has been turned into this book, but also edited by Ben Hecht, and he has also like added details and stuff. So I'm really not sure how much she can really be credited as the author, and how much other influences may be coming into play here with the narrative this book has. But I did really enjoy it and like it. It's in first person, so it really makes certain details of her life and situations that she went through just hit even more, I feel like. And I also think because it's in first person, just assuming that it is her words and not too much is altered, I think it really gives you insight into who she was and how she processed her things that were going on around her and events in her life. I don't know if that did justice to her words and her story, but I very much liked it. But then I would have to say that Fragments is my favorite, just because, I don't know, see, I also feel like it's kind of unethical in a way, because she doesn't know that this is published. Would she have wanted this to be published? I don't know. So I have an ethical dilemma with this book, even though I would say that it's my favorite just because of how raw it really is. It's Fragments, Poems, Intimate Notes, Letters by Marilyn Monroe, edited by Stanley Buchthal and Bernard Comment. And it's, one side is like a scan of like one of her notebooks or something, whatever it may be, a piece of paper, a napkin that she wrote on, something else that she had in her apartment, bungalow, whatever. There's a word for the place that she like lived in, but and there's lots of other pictures in here as well, but it has like a scan of something of hers that she pretty much wrote on or drew on, and then it has the like text so that you can properly read it, as much that they could decipher. There are some lines that are kind of hard to read that they don't know what says, and then there's like spelling errors that they correct. And again, this just gives you, so like, even everything I said about my story, like, amplify it, and that is Fragments. I feel like Marilyn Monroe has always seemed like this really untouchable figure, as particularly like a Hollywood figure. But in this, she felt very relatable. But also I felt like, I don't know, it's so hard to describe because I just like love her so much and respect her and have so much empathy for her. Also, it is the like somethingth, I don't know, 100th, 150th. I'm not sure when Ulysses was first published, but it's a major anniversary this year of when Ulysses was published. And if you don't know, Ulysses was Marilyn Monroe's favorite book. And I thought about doing a video that's like reading Marilyn Monroe's favorite books, but her favorite book is literally Ulysses. That's a big book. And also probably one of the few books that I'm actually intimidated by. So, don't know if I would actually do that, but I thought about it. I don't know, just for extra information there. So there's that. And if you follow me on Letterboxd, you'll have noticed that last year I was also watching certain Marilyn Monroe films, and that's just something like really prompted it. But my mom and I have been watching her films because my mom hadn't at the time before we started this, hadn't seen any of her films before. I think we watched like Some Like It Hot. Yeah, I think we watched Some Like It Hot like a couple years ago. And then she, at some point, I think even before that, oh, right. Okay, this is totally unnecessary information, but she was reading a book that was about Some Like It Hot. It was like a historical fiction book that had to do with the main character being Marilyn Monroe's assistant on the set of Some Like It Hot. But my mom had never seen Some Like It Hot before. And then, so reading that book, she wanted to see Some Like It Hot, then watch more from Marilyn Monroe, as well as Audrey Hepburn, just because she knows that those are a couple of, like, significant actresses for me, and they are one of the reasons why I got like a lot more into classic films. They're kind of like where I started in a way, which is something that I was going to talk about in the video pertaining to Marilyn Monroe. And with reading these books, I wasn't really going to dive into these books. I was just going to mention that I have like a number of nonfiction books about Marilyn Monroe. So anyway, we were watching Marilyn Monroe's films, at least the ones that I own. We're on There's No Business Like Show Business. We've taken quite a break. We've watched a lot of other movies in the meantime, but that's the next one that we have coming up, because I've just been going basically in chronological order, again, with the ones that I own. Then, we have The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson. Absolutely love that I said I was not going to talk about things, but this is going so much better than yesterday. This is a short story collection, by the way, that has like so many short stories. I could not even begin to tell you what this is about, because there is no overarching there's so many things involved, but I definitely think that the way that Shirley Jackson writes, it's like about the mundane, but like the sinister beneath the mundane. She very much deals with just like everyday life, especially just womanhood in, you know, quintessential Americana 1950s, that sort of situation, but there's always something sort of sinister lurking underneath. And it's not even necessarily actually something scary or like gothic in the sense of a more supernatural presence or something like that. It's usually something that is actually like part of everyday life, if you get what I mean. I mean, it goes back and forth. There are some that definitely involve some sort of otherworldly element, but a lot of it has to deal with just like the real world and society at the time that it was written, which is still like quite prevalent today in a way, just because that is the basis of so much of our society nowadays, and that's what we're trying to sort of move away from, but it still has its grip on us to an extent. And I honestly don't remember I think I marked it in my review, my Goodreads review. I will, by the way, link like my Goodreads and stuff. I'll probably only link the Oh no, could you see my review then? I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm linking reviews and stuff in the description. It's hard. I mean, there's not an overarching plot anyway, so here's one of the short story collections that I read. Alright, actually, I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna stop there and then continue filming tomorrow. But that is kind of we're at like the end of summer / beginning of fall in a way, because then the next like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 next titles are more fall Halloween stuff. So, or like October titles. So I feel like that's a good place to stop. We're on, what was that? 20. That was number 20. The 20th book that I finished. I'm so glad I decided to film again, because this went much better than it did yesterday. Even though I was trying to be concise, I still was concise in a way. I struggled a bit, definitely, but I was not as elaborate as I was yesterday. I got much further than I did yesterday. So, thank you for watching this. Stay tuned for the rest of the books that I read. Most of my favorites, I guess half of my favorites you've seen, and half of my favorites are coming up. So, look forward to that. In the meantime, though, I'm also trying to figure out what to do in terms of a favorite movies that I watched in 2021 video. I have to narrow that down a lot and try to figure out a better structure. Maybe I'll try to do like a top 10 or something like that, so I'm not talking about a bunch of movies, especially because I would like to continue with the Criterion Channel year whatever videos, and I'll be talking about a lot of titles in those videos anyway when I catch up. Yeah, lots of things that I'm thinking about. Thank you for watching. I would love to know how your reading went in 2021, though, if you are a reader, and if you have any goals for this year. And I will see you in the continuation of this in my next video, whatever comes next. So again, thank you for watching. I'll see you then. Bye.